Hola, Bogotá. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today and talk to you about the science of word of mouth. And to do that, I want to start us out with a very simple game. So, if we can get the slides up. Let's see. Oh, yeah. There we go. The game is called Which is Tastier? And you've probably never played this game before, but you'll get the hang of it very quickly. I'm going to put two things up on the screen, and I'm going to ask you which of those things is tastier. And not which you wish was tastier, not which should be tastier, but which of the two is actually tastier, okay? Our first contestant is a delicious head of broccoli. Now, you probably know that broccoli has lots of vitamins and nutrients. You probably know that broccoli has a lot of fiber. You might not have realized that broccoli has lots of vitamin C. But our first contestant is wonderful, delicious, very healthy broccoli. And our second contestant is a cheeseburger. Now, this is not my version of the cheeseburger. Whenever I eat a cheeseburger, I love it to have bacon on top, maybe a little bit of blue cheese, a little bit of grilled onions. But feel free to pick whatever toppings you want on top of the cheeseburger. And to keep things even, feel free to put whatever toppings you want on the broccoli as well. Okay, so very simply, which of these is tastier? How many of you would vote for the cheeseburger? Okay, looks like almost everybody. Okay, how many for the broccoli? Okay, a few people. Now we know which of our colleagues or friends are vegetarians, or maybe liars, one or the other. I'll let you guess based on how well you know them, but the point here is simple. Certain food is tastier than others. And it's not random or luck how that works, right? It fits better with the way our tongues and our stomachs are designed. McDonald's has spent millions of dollars engineering French fries, so when they hit our tongue, it has the right amount of salt and sugar and crisp, just so that our tongues light up, right? They're delicious, they're just plain tastier. Even though we know that we should eat more broccoli, we don't always do what we should do. And so I'd like to take the same analogy, certain food is tastier than others, and port it to a slightly different domain. I'm not going to talk this morning about food. I'm going to talk about how to get products and ideas to catch on. But using this analogy, how tasty is our marketing? Not to people's stomachs or their tongues, but to their minds. Because just like certain food is tastier than others, certain products and ideas fit better with the way that people are designed. And if we understand that underlying consumer behavior, why people talk and share, why things catch on, we can build products and services that are more likely to be successful. So today I'll answer three questions. First, how can we make our marketing tastier? How by understanding that science of human behavior can we become more effective marketers? Second, how can we create contagious and viral content? I know many of us are interested in why things go viral. How can we do that? And then third, how can we grow our businesses through word of mouth and referrals? As I'll talk about today, word of mouth is 10 times as effective as traditional advertising. But to make word of mouth work for us, we have to understand why people talk and share. And that brings me to one more question for you guys. So here on the screen are three products or brands that everyone is probably quite familiar with. We have Walt Disney World, the self-described place where dreams come true. We have Honey Nut Cheerios, the delicious breakfast cereal. And last but not least, we have Scrubbing Bubbles. You may not be familiar with Scrubbing Bubbles. In case you're not, it's a bathroom cleaner. Now think for a moment, which of these three things do you think gets the most word of mouth? Is it Disney World? Is it Cheerios? Or is it Scrubbing Bubbles? And I've asked this question to thousands of folks. I heard someone say Disney. How many would go with Disney? With Disney World? Almost everybody, right? There might be, how many for Scrubbing Bubbles? A couple. Cheerios? A couple. Okay. Two things I want to point out from this exercise. First, this question's a little harder than the cheeseburger versus the broccoli. Right? This one's a little more difficult. And in fact, many of you are sitting there going, well, I don't have any idea what the answer to this is. And the specific answer to this question doesn't matter very much. Because unless you work for Disney World, or you work for Cheerios, or you work for Scrubbing Bubbles, which of the three gets more word of mouth doesn't matter to you. But the why is very important. Because unless we understand why one of these gets more word of mouth, it's going to be hard to get more word of mouth for our stuff. Which brings me to my second point. How many people guessed Disney World? Top vote getter, almost everybody, right? Great guess. Unfortunately, it's wrong. The answer is Cheerios. The one that about 5 of us, out of a whole room of a couple thousand people, guessed. And the point here is simple. Sometimes our intuition about word of mouth is wrong. You might be spending a lot of time and money and energy in the wrong places. Unless you understand that science, why people talk and share, word of mouth is not going to work for you. So let's talk about how to get that. So that's a long-winded introduction to a title slide, but as was nicely mentioned, I'm Jonah Berger. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and the best-selling author of Contagious, Why Things Catch On. What I'll do today is give you a brief tour of some of the highlights of this book. I don't have enough time to talk about all the ideas in the book, so I'll talk about a couple of them, but the book is available online. It may be available for sale here today, so feel free to check out the rest of the details. Everything I'll talk about today is based on rigorous academic science. I've spent the last 15 years studying this space. I would love to be a social media guru. Apparently, all you need to do to be a social media guru is to have a theory. You don't actually need to collect any data to see if that theory is correct. You just get to assume your theory is right. And that's great, but it's not very helpful for us. We need data to understand whether ideas are right or not. And so everything I'm going to talk about today is based on rigorous science. All the papers are in the back of the book. They're also up at jonahberger.com. But I'm not going to talk about statistics today, because I found that is a great way to put everyone to sleep. So I'm going to tell stories because stories are the currency of conversation. But underneath each of these stories is the science that will help us get our stuff to catch on. Also, if you want to ask me any questions, feel free to find me at J1Berger on Twitter. I'm happy to answer your questions after the talk. So let me jump right in with a quote about word of mouth. In case you haven't realized this already, word of mouth generates more than twice the sales of traditional advertising. No matter what product category you're in, word of mouth is generating many more sales than advertising. And I think we all know this, right? If you think about the last restaurant you tried, the last movie you watched, the last book you read, checked out those things because someone you know told you it was great. Ads always say the product is great. They say, hey, we have the best service. We have the greatest technology. Use our shampoo. You'll get wonderful hair. You'll meet an attractive man or woman to spend the rest of your life with. No ad ever says, we have the 7th best customer service. Use our shampoo and you'll get an ugly significant other, an ugly boyfriend or girlfriend. Every ad says the product is great. But because of that, we don't know whether to trust it or not. We can't trust whether actually saying is true. That's the first reason that word of mouth is more effective than advertising. We trust our friends and colleagues. We know they'll tell it to us straight. We're much more likely to listen to what they have to say. But the second benefit is a little more nuanced. That's the targeting benefit of word of mouth. How do we find the right customers or clients that might be interested in what we have to offer? It's difficult. Right? Sometimes we try to buy an ad in a magazine or on a television show or on the radio that goes after a segment that we think might like our product. So if we're going after women 35 to 45, well, let's buy television time on a television show that seems to attract women 35 to 45. But many of those women are already using our product, many of them are using the competitor, and many of them are not interested in changing. How do we find the right people that might be interested in what we have to offer? Well, word of mouth does a much better job of that. It goes through a social network like a searchlight, finding the person or people that'll find that information most relevant. Great example of this happened to me a couple of years ago. I got a book in the mail for free. Publishers often send academics books with the hopes that we'll assign them to our students and they'll sell more copies in the process. But this time they sent me 2 copies of the same book, not just one, a second copy. I looked at the second copy, I flipped through the pages, I said, this is exactly the same as the first copy. Why 2 copies of the same book? Well, there's a little note inside that said, hey, Professor Berger, we think you'll like this book, but we think you'll also know someone else who will like this book. Pass the second copy on to them. And that's the first simple hack I'm going to share with you this morning. How by turning customers into advocates can we get them to do the targeting for us? Because I didn't just pass that book out randomly. I passed it to the person in my social network that I thought would find that information most valuable, most useful. No wonder then that referred customers have 20% higher customer lifetime value than other customers, people that come off the street. They're more interested in what you have to offer because someone else did the targeting for them. Uber did a great job of this, and I know a bunch of folks from Uber around today. So they've been having, at least in the United States, a little bit of PR issues recently. So they're sending out a number of emails to their followers. This one is a very nice pro-social note saying, hey, happy holidays. Here at Uber, we care about your holiday party, so we're offering you free rides for your guests. Just click on this link, request free rides for your guests here, and you click on that link, and you can get free rides for anyone who's coming to your party. Well, that's really nice of them to do, right? To offer free rides for your guests. That's a nice thing. But notice it's not just nice. Notice what just happened. They said, hey, existing Uber user, who else do you know in your social network that might like Uber? And give this to them. They got you to do the targeting for them. And think about if someone got a free ride to Uber and they showed up at the party. What would they do when they got there? They would tell everyone else how interesting Uber was that they just tried it. Right? By turning customers into advocates, we can get them to do the targeting for us. We can get them to figure out who might like our product or service. The only question is how to get them to do that. So let's turn there next. So usually, when we think about getting word of mouth, we think online. We think about technologies like Facebook, like Twitter, like blogs, like online review, social media, and the like. If you had to guess, out of 100%, all the way down to 0, what percent of all word of mouth would you guess is online? Out of all word of mouth, what percent is on LinkedIn, and Facebook, and Twitter, and YouTube, and blogs, and online reviews? From 100 all the way down to 0. What number might you guess? 20? Somebody else said 50. I heard someone say 70. Right? You might think it's 50 or 60%, or at least 20. Right? Most word of mouth must be online. You know how much word of mouth is online? 7%. 7% of all word of mouth is online. And I work for lots of companies and organizations, and when they hear that number, they say, well, why are we spending so much time and effort on social media? And I say, well, that's a great question. Why are you spending so much time and energy on social media if only 7% of word of mouth is online? It's not that online isn't important. Online is a great channel for sharing word of mouth. Word of mouth online can spread faster and farther more quickly than it can offline. And for certain products, online is very important. But only a small portion of word of mouth is online. Most talking people do is still face-to-face. Face-to-face conversations are the original social media, right? The first time people shared word of mouth wasn't when Myspace came along. It was one caveman nudging another and saying, don't eat that, it's poisonous, right? Face-to-face word of mouth has been happening for thousands of years. And by focusing so much on the technology, we forgot about something much more important, the psychology. Why do people talk and share in the first place? Because it's really easy to jump on the bandwagon. Well, they're on Facebook, we should too. Well, they're on LinkedIn, we should also. Instagram, we should be there as well. Remember Myspace? About 10 years ago, Myspace was going to be the biggest thing that ever happened. And then it wasn't. Okay, maybe that was just one example. Maybe that's the only example of things that have happened like this. Remember Foursquare? Foursquare was also supposed to be the next big social media site, until it wasn't. It's really easy to follow the trends. It's much harder to understand human behavior. And I think this cartoon illustrates it really nicely. So it's a little bit morose, but it's some people at a funeral, and someone saying he had over 2,000 Facebook friends. I was expecting a bigger turnout. I think most brands are expecting a bigger turnout. There was some notion if we just collected friends and followers that we would be successful. Friends and followers don't correlate to sales. If you can't activate those friends and followers, if you can't get them to share, they're not going to pass things on. You are not going to be successful. We have to get people to share our content. How do we do that? Well, that brings me to a very cute picture of a cat. Now, this is not my cat. It's a cat DJ. It's actually scratching its little cat paw on a cat turntable. It's not really a turntable. It's like a scratching post for a cat. But why a picture of a cat in a talk about word of mouth and viral marketing? Well, very simply, if you typed in online about 5 years ago, what makes things viral, you got one word back as your answer. Cats. Why do people share things? Cats. People love sharing cat videos and cat pictures. Cats must be the reason that people share things online. If there were no cats, the internet would come to a grinding halt. There would be no Google. Facebook would go out of business if there were not cats. That's a great theory. Obviously, it's completely wrong. Rather than talk about cats, I'm going to talk about science. I've spent the last 15 years studying this domain. We've looked at thousands of pieces of online content, tens of thousands of brands, and millions of purchases. And again, we see the same 6 factors driving word of mouth. The same 6 things, whether it's B2C or B2B, whether it's online or offline, whether you're selling a product or a service. Same 6 key factors, what I call the steps. 6 key drivers of social transmission. Steps stand for 6 ideas. They stand for social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. Each of these is a scientifically driven principle based on human psychology, backed up by data that shows that people share. We can say that a dose of emotion, for example, certain types of emotions, increases sharing by 30%. That's what data allows us to say. If you notice steps is spelled incorrectly, that is because I'm not very clever. I could not come up with a better acronym to put these 6 ideas together, but it's out now in over 35 languages, the book is. There are a few 100,000 copies in print. We are stuck with steps. I don't have time today to go through all 6, so I'll talk about social currency, I'll talk about triggers, I'll wrap up by talking about stories, but if you want to read about the others, you want to understand more of the science, there's a chapter on each in the book, and many more examples and many more ways to think about applying it. So let me jump in with one stat and then a story. 91% of new business leads come from existing business. I'm going to use a lot of B2C examples today because they're very fun, they're engaging. 91% of new business, if you're in a B2B company, comes from existing business. So don't sit there saying, I can't do this. Think about, how can I do this? How can I make it work for my business? So imagine you're in New York City one day, you're walking around the Lower East Side. Your stomach is rumbling, you're hungry, you gotta get a bite to eat. When you notice a big hot dog-shaped sign, sausage-shaped sign, in front of a restaurant with the words "Eat Me" written on it in what looked like mustard. You say, I haven't had a hot dog in a while, I'll check this place out. So you walk down a flight of stairs into a restaurant called Criff Dogs. Now, if you like hot dogs, you will be in heaven. Criff Dogs has every hot dog you can imagine. From a good morning hot dog with bacon, eggs, and cheese. I don't know if you'd want to eat a hot dog for breakfast, but interesting nonetheless. A hot dog with green onion and pineapple, and a traditional New York-style water dog with just ketchup and mustard. So you're sitting there, you're eating your hot dog, when you notice something unusual in the corner of the room. It almost looks like a phone booth, like one of those things that Clark Kent might jump into to change into Superman. So just for fun, slide open that door and step inside. It's pretty cramped in there. It's a phone booth after all, a little tight. But on the wall, you'll see something you probably haven't seen in 20 years. A rotary dial phone. Remember those phones you have to stick your finger into and go around in a circle to dial? Well, it's one of those. Pick up the receiver, hold it to your ear, dial any number you want. Number 3, number 4, whatever you want. Go around in a circle. Well, the phone will actually ring. It'll go ring, ring, and then someone will pick up the other line. And they'll ask you whether you have a reservation. Now, the first time I heard this story, I said, reservation? What could I possibly have a reservation for? I'm in a phone booth inside of a hot dog restaurant. But if a friend of yours happen to have a reservation, or they happen to have space, the back of that phone booth will open, and you'll be led into a secret bar called Please Don't Tell. Now, Please Don't Tell has violated a number of traditional laws of marketing. No sign on the street, no sign inside the restaurant. They've done everything they can to make themselves difficult to find. Yet they never advertise that every day they're full. 3 p.m., the phone lines open up. By 3:30, all the seats are gone. People frantically hit redial again and again and again trying to get through. It took me 2 weeks to get into this place. And it's not for lack of competition. There are dozens of bars within a 2-block radius and thousands of bars in New York City. So how did they do it? How did they cut through the clutter and get attention? Well, they did something really interesting. Please Don't Tell made themselves a secret. And let me tell you a little secret about secrets. Think about the last time someone told you something, and they told you not to tell anybody else.
Más rápido lo cuento.
What's the first thing you then did with that information? You told somebody, right? Because having access to information that not everyone else knows makes you look smart. It makes you look in the know. It gives you what I'll call social currency. Just like the car we drive, and just like the clothes we wear, the things we say and the things we share affect how other people see us. So one way to get people talking about us is to make them look good. Because the better we make them look, the more likely they'll be to talk about our stuff. Too often as marketers, we think, how do I look? Do I look smart? Do I look clever? Are people gonna like me? Forget about you. Make them look good, and they'll talk and share. So I spent a couple minutes unpacking this idea. So I wanted to introduce you to a friend of mine. Her name is Carla. She doesn't drive a cool Audi like is over there. She drives a minivan. And I want to see how much you can guess about Carla solely based on this fact. So if you had to guess, for example, how old might you guess that Carla is? I'd say between, I don't know, 35 and 45. Okay. She have kids? Well, probably. Do they play sports? Probably. What sport do you think they play? Football, soccer, right? How do we make these inferences? How do we know for sure? Do we know Carla? No. But we make inferences about people based on what they drive. Someone shows up driving that versus someone shows up driving that, you're going to think different things about them, right? You're going to think different things about that person. Same with what people wear. I thought a lot about what to wear to come see you guys today. I do a lot of these talks. I get up on a stage like this. Someone in the audience goes, "Are you 18 years old?" Okay, I have a young face. I'm not 18 years old. My face is much younger than I actually am. But I know that I have a young face, so I wear a sport coat to show that I'm professional and encourage you to think that I'm at least 24 years old rather than 18, and I have my own credit card and can buy my own clothes. Because if I got up here today wearing shorts and a t-shirt, you probably wouldn't take me seriously. Clothes, just like cars, are a signal of who we are. Same with what people talk about and share. Some people like to talk a lot about technology. Other people like to talk about restaurants. What we talk about is a signal of who we are. So how can we get people talking about us? Well, give them desired signals. The first way is how can we make our customers feel like insiders? Special, smart, and in the know, like they're not like everybody else. Please Don't Tell did a great job of that. Right? A bar hidden inside a hot dog restaurant, if you find out about that, you feel different from everybody. You feel special, you want to tell everyone else because you know it makes you look good. But it's not just them, right? Great example I saw recently even here, Coke. Fantastic job this last summer. All they did was put people's names on the bottles. They took a product that wasn't necessarily exciting, unused real estate, and made it a conversation piece. If you see your name on a bottle, you see your friend's name on a bottle, you're gonna pick it up and you're gonna talk to them about it. It took something usual and made it unusual, right? It made it feel special, it made it a conversation piece. It made people feel different from everybody else. But it's not just that, there are other ways to get social currency as well. The second big one, I talk about 4 in the book, here I'll talk about 2. The second big one is to find the inner remarkability. And I think this is really important. Some of you might think, well look, certain products are naturally remarkable. They're worthy of remark. They're surprising, they're novel, they're interesting. People will talk about them. Other products are boring. People would never talk about them. Dish soap, who would talk about dish soap? Socks, bike lights, pens, pencils, dishwasher, maybe a blender. I'm going to show you today how a blender company got over 200 million views for one of the least exciting products ever. Oh, let's try that again. Can you guys roll the videotape, please? That's not it. Okay, we'll try that again.
Will it
There we
blend?
go. Thank you.
That is the question. I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button. I smoke. Don't breathe this. on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did. But I have another. I'm going to put this on eBay.
This is a little bit remarkable, right? This video has over 10 million views. The set has over 200 million. They do it for all sorts of products. Blender sales go up over 700% when these videos come out. Now, any of us would be happy with a 700% sales increase. The most remarkable thing about this piece of content. The most remarkable thing is that they did this for one of the least exciting products ever. A blender. Most of us have no idea even what type of blender we have at our home, but this got people talking about blenders, because it's not that some products are naturally remarkable and others are doomed to fail. Anything can be made remarkable if you find that inner remarkability. If you show people rather than tell people. They didn't get up there and say, hey, we make a really powerful blender, because no one would share that. They showed people how powerful the blender was. And because they showed people, people were much more likely to talk and share. Let me show you one more example of this, another fun one related to soda. A pro-social message, trying to get people to drink less soda. Everybody's going to reach for a soda at lunch today, right? So again, doing a great job of showing rather than telling. Not just saying, hey, soda's not good for you, showing people how much sugar soda has in it. Okay, I'll skip this example in the interest of time. Next I want to talk about triggers, and to do this I want to use an ad that's very popular in the United States. So in the US at least, Wednesday is called Hump Day. And they call it Hump Day because it's the hump of the week. Not the beginning, not the end, but the hump on the way to the end of the week. So in lots of offices, people walk around going, today is Hump Day, they're very excited about it. Geico put together an ad based on this. A camel walking around an office going, what day is it today, guys? What day is it? What day is it? Really annoying camel. Finally, he finds this woman. He goes, what day is it? The woman goes, woo woo. It's Hump Day. The camel gets very excited. And the ad says, how happy are people who save money with Geico? Happier than a camel on Hump Day. Get it? Camel has humps. Hump Day. You're supposed to at least chuckle at my jokes. Come on, it's at least a little funny. Maybe I didn't do a very good job of telling it. But this is the second most shared ad in the United States of last year. Second most shared. And not the second most shared insurance ad, the second most shared ad of all ads, period. Including beer ads and car ads and all sorts of different ads. So if it's not that funny, why did so many people share it? Well, I'm a data guy, dug a little deeper. Here's the share data for this video. It's a spike in shares, and then it goes down. Then another spike, then it goes down. Another spike, then it goes down. If you look closer, the spikes aren't random. They're 7 days apart. And if you look even closer, you'll notice that they're every Wednesday, or as it's colloquially known, Hump Day. Now, this content is equally good or bad, depending on your preferences, every day of the year. It's good or bad on Monday, it's good or bad on Tuesday, it's good or bad on Wednesday, but because it talks about Hump Day, Wednesday provides a ready reminder, what psychologists would call a trigger, to make people think about it and talk about it and share it. Because if something's top of mind, it's much more likely to be tip of tongue. The more we're thinking about something, the more likely we are to talk about it and purchase it. Some psychologists did a great study in the grocery store a few years ago. Some days they played French music, and some days they played German music. And what did they find? Well, on days they played French music, sales of French wine went up. And on days they played German music, sales of German wine went up. Did the music change what wine people liked? No, people still like the same wine, but it reminded them to think about that wine. Too often as marketers, we think if people will like us, they'll purchase from us. So we measure how much do you like us. But it doesn't just matter whether people like us. People may love Audi, but if they never think about Audi, they're never going to buy one. You have to be triggered to remember. So let's spend a couple minutes talking about this idea of triggers. Here's some more data. This is word of mouth about Cheerios by time of day. So 2 a.m., 4 a.m. throughout the day. What you notice is that people talk about Cheerios around breakfast. When people use a product, much more top of mind, much more likely to talk about it. Right? You notice how it shifted to the right on the weekend? Why? People wake up later, they talk about it later. Thinking about it later in the day, more likely to talk about it later in the day. But notice what happens the rest of the day. Notice how it's flat, it's low. Why is that? Because people were thinking about it, but they don't keep thinking about it, right? You come back from this conference today, you had a great time, you tell your friends, but next week it's not going to be as top of mind as it was. If someone purchases a product from you, you're top of mind now, but you're not going to continue to be top of mind. This is the problem with Disney World. Disney World is a really engaging experience. People love Disney. When they come back, they're happy to talk about it. But then they don't keep talking about it because nothing reminds them of that decision. Nothing reminds them of that experience. And people only go once every couple of years, once every 3 years, once every 4 years, once every 5 years, which means they only talk about it once every 3 years, once every 4 years, once every 5 years. So how can we make sure people talk about us even when they haven't used us recently? Are there other triggers as well? Well, good news, there are. So if I said peanut butter and, for example, well, you might think of the word jelly. Thank you. Or if I said rum and, you might think of Coke. Notice that peanut butter is like a little advertisement for jelly. It's almost like jelly should pay peanut butter a kickback or a referral fee, right? Every time peanut butter's around. Because if peanut butter's around, jelly doesn't have to remind you it exists. Peanut butter does all the work for jelly, right? And so this is why Michelob a few years ago had a slogan, "Weekends are made for Michelob." They wanted people to think about the beer when the weekend rolled around. Corona's done the same thing with the beach. I challenge you to go on a beach vacation and never think about Corona. It's pretty much impossible, right? You're on the beach, you're lying in the sand, you're not thinking about beer, right? Then you get thirsty, you say, I need something to drink. You might not like beer, you might hate Corona, but when you're thirsty at the beach, Corona always comes to mind. And it always has a lime in it. How does that work? Well, think about it for a moment. The beach is Corona's trigger. The beach is Corona's peanut butter. And so I would ask you very simply here is what is your peanut butter? What's the thing in the environment that's going to remind people of you even when you're not around? Because you can market to them a lot, you can advertise, you can send them emails, you can get on your website, and that gets boring very quickly and people aren't going to listen. They react against those messages. They know you're trying to sell them something. But if every time they see a peanut butter, they think of your jelly, you're going to come to mind much more often. Kit Kat did exactly this a few years ago. Sales were down by about 30%. So they came out with a simple slogan, Kit Kat and coffee, it breaks best friend. Having a coffee break? Have a Kit Kat. Think about coffee, think about Kit Kat. Coffee and Kit Kat and coffee, best friends forever. Now if you're a Kit Kat, why do you want to link yourself to something like coffee? Well, you think about it, people drink coffee frequently, right? Drink it often, and many people drink it. More frequent, more likely to come to mind, right? And as a result, more Kit Kats were sold. Sales went from 300 million to 500 million. People liked the brand, but they weren't thinking about it. Triggered more often, more likely to choose. Okay, I don't have time to talk about emotion today. Very simply, when we care, we're much more likely to share. But certain emotions increase sharing and certain decrease sharing. I'll let you read about it in the book. It's not as simple as a positive increase and negative decrease. It's more complicated than that. I don't have time today to talk about public, but I'll let you read about that in the book as well. It's all about how making things visible increase the chance they grow. Same with practical value, all about how we frame numbers and how we make numbers more impactful. The same discount isn't the same discount. Depends on how that discount is framed. I'll actually walk through this example for 1 second. So imagine you sell a $20 product and you want to discount it to motivate people to purchase. You could say it's $5 off. $5 off, $20. Great, might make people purchase. Or you could say it's 25% off. 25% off, $20 is economically the same as $5 off. At the end of the day, the consumer pays $15. But are those equally motivating to the consumer? No. People are much more likely to purchase that product if it's 25% off rather than $5 off, even though it costs them the same. That's funny. Maybe consumers just like percentage discounts. We'll take $2,000, something in that neck of the woods. We could have $500 off or 25% off. Again, same monetary amount. The consumer would end up paying $1,500. But they're much more likely to take the deal if it's $500 off rather than if it's 25% off. It's something I call the rule of 100, and I'll let you read about it more in the practical value chapter. Numbers are not just numbers. How we frame those numbers changes their impact. Okay, I want to wrap up by talking about stories, and I wanted to save some time for this. If you notice, I've been telling stories throughout my talk today. I hope you enjoyed them. If you think about what you remember from this great conference, great slate of speakers, put their kids to bed at night, Nobody tells bedtime facts. Doesn't happen. People tell bedtime stories, right? So why do we communicate in facts? We need to use stories to communicate our ideas, but certain stories are more effective than others. We need to build those Trojan horse stories. I hope you like pan and cheese. I hope you found it interesting and funny, but notice it's not just funny. I challenge you to tell someone else about that story and not mention a particular word. And that word is panda, which is exactly the brand that they want you to remember. They built a story that carries the brand along for the ride. So think about those 6 key steps, and you can read about emotion, public, and practical value in the book. I saw many of you taking notes. One last slide for me. I know at a conference like this, there's a huge amount of information. It's hard to take all the notes from all the speakers, and when you get back to the office, you never know what to do next. 2 key next steps from this talk. First, what's your kernel? What is the thing or things that you want people to say about you? Not just that you want word of mouth. I work with hundreds of clients at this point. Many of them say, oh, we want more word of mouth. That's not what you want. You want people to say something specific. What is that thing you want them to say? And then second, how can you apply those steps to make that word of mouth work? How can you find your social currency? How can you find high arousal emotions? And in case it helps, there's a free workbook on my website, just jonahberger.com/resources, that'll ask you some questions, that'll walk you through some exercises to help you find the answers to these questions. Because we think word of mouth is luck, that viral is chance, but it's not. There's a science behind why people talk and share. If we understand that science, we can craft contagious content, and we get our products and ideas to catch on. Thank you very much.